WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Sarah Keyeski of Lodi is the Democratic candidate for the 14th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Sarah Keyeski, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for participating in this candidate interview. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Well, I'm hoping to be a fresh voice that is looking for solutions. So problem solving, that's kind of how I orient my life. And so trying to make sure that when I see a problem, I work to fix a problem and try to be really pragmatic in doing that. So that's really kind of how I'm focused on this too.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Well, one of the things I think is really important, so I'm a mental health provider. That's what I've been doing for 25 years. And so I think about what are ways that we can make sure that we are working on helping kind of some of the primary needs so that people can have those met so that they also can then elevate to the other needs that they might have. And so one of the primary needs that I think needs to be addressed is food insecurity. And so a bill I would love to see passed is being able to do universal meals for children in school so that they can be fed and not have to worry about their grumbling little bellies, but instead can really focus on learning and growing in that way.
If you're elected to the state senate, you'll be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year, and the state is projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. I'm wondering, what would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Well, again, paying for these meals for kids. I really think that will help bring down some of the financial distress for families also, these working families that right now are struggling. I'm one of those. I have 6 kids. And so it is hard right now to pay for all the things that in some ways are costing more, the groceries, the gas. And so if we can take this burden off of families, I think that helps both the children in, again, their development and their mental capacity, but also it helps bring down some of the stress in the family. And as a mental health provider, that is one of my core goals, is how do we help middle-class families be able to function in a way that is not just full of distress and instead is able to be in this safe place where we're thriving and not just surviving.
Do you have another priority for use of the surplus? What about taxes? You talk about spending on school lunches. Tax cuts, tax reform, is that part of your vision?
I think that would be great. You'd have to be really targeted. And I would like to see some kind of tax break for middle class families again. I think we are being taxed a lot. And I understand why to some degree, but I don't know that the upper echelon is being taxed in the way that would be most beneficial for all people. And instead, I think we're getting like overtaxed in the middle class area.
K-12 education is a leading issue for many voters. You talked about school lunches. What's your other campaign top priority for K-12 education?
So mental health, again. So I would love to see more mental health services in every school. Unfortunately, the rates of anxiety and depression in children is growing. The needs for special education services are growing. And so we really need to have more counselors, more mental health providers in schools so that those needs can be met on the front end when they're maybe starting, so that they don't have to be developed into some sort of pathology that is greater, maybe a drug addiction, for example. And so if we can help early, I think we'll be doing so much good for our children, and I think it's a really great way to use our money.
What about higher education? Wisconsin's system of four-year colleges, two-year colleges, technical colleges. What does the future look like for you in that system, and how should the legislature focus?
Well, I think really valuing all of them. I think the technical schools have a really important place to play for individuals that steer in that direction and should be able to do a wonderful education in an area that is so valuable for our economy. I think the two-year schools are important along with four-year schools. The two-year schools, as we've seen in my district, Richland Center, the university there, the two-year school, had to close down. And that has made a huge impact on that community. It affects families and children that maybe can't start their educational career just staying at home. It changes the dynamics of the economy in that community because it's shut down. Now we have professors that have left. We have teachers that are not going to be there, and students that won't be enrolled.
Do you think the legislature needs to put more money into higher education?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think in general, I think we need to be a really strong advocate for educating our kids, because that is an investment that pays dividends in the long run. They will be able to be better in the workforce and also just contributing in our society in really meaningful ways if they are feeling like they can have these meaningful jobs based on good education.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how do you propose to address it?
Well, we need people to stay in Wisconsin and take the jobs in Wisconsin. One of the dilemmas is we have these small towns that don't have enough people that are able to live in them, to have the housing available to them that is at their affordability level so that they can work the jobs maybe in a grocery store or a restaurant. And so then we have a workplace shortage where we don't have enough employees in those places. So we need to address making sure that our towns, our cities have really viable environments. So we have the housing that they would need. We have the schools that are really beneficial. We have healthy water. So people want to live there and then are wanting to build their families there and then work in those areas.
Another workforce question for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think investing in our state, again, means helping those in our state have really well-paying, family-supporting jobs, because if they can, and giving them those jobs, if they can, then what they do is they spend that money that they have earned in those communities. And so it's a benefit. And so we don't want to be spending our money in people that are going to be spending it in another state necessarily. We want to be spending it on the people that are right here and enriching our towns.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this, and what do you think should be done about it?
I am aware, and I think we need to have labor protections. I think we need to make sure that people are given a reasonable wage and are able to be participants in labor unions if they would like, so that they can be fortifying what their needs are to make sure that their employment is healthy and safe, and again, able to support these families with wages that are reasonable.
You mentioned affordable housing a little bit ago. Affordable rental housing is an issue across Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rentals?
Right now, I think we need to increase the inventory. If in due time, like I said, I have 6 kids. I have a house that's housed all of us. They are now going off to school, and they're hopefully going to be developing their own lives. I want to be able to downsize, but in my small town, I can't. there is hardly any place to go. And so even for me, I need, something smaller in due time. But we don't have much for, single family units. We don't have hardly anything for multifamily units. And so we're struggling overall to have these options. And then with the cost of everything, it makes it even exponentially harder. And people are unfortunately having to pay more than what is like kind of the typical 30% of their income on housing. So we need to make a big adjustment and make sure that we have the supply for the demand.
So legislature should invest in incentives for housing development?
Absolutely.
Moving on to health care, medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
One of the things I've learned as I've gotten more schooled in all the machinations of state government is the unfortunate blocking of Medicaid expansion for our state. We are one of 10 that has not done that. That is really harming, especially our rural hospitals, because that is oftentimes where many of their patients are from that have Medicaid or Badger Care. And without that, they can't stay afloat. We need to have local services for our people. And again, I live in a district that has a huge rural population. I grew up on a farm myself in Cashton, Wisconsin, so I know the importance of having local services available so you're not having to drive, hours away in a medical emergency and being able to see somebody.
So Medicaid expansion is an answer.
Medicaid expansion, absolutely.
Mental health care, you mentioned that as a priority for you. It's a growing concern, as you know, across Wisconsin, and a concern for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue? And I guess if you want to expand on what you would do to improve mental health care.
What's been really interesting is I thought when I would go to the doors and I would say I'm a mental health provider, people would be not terribly interested or maybe think, well, where's all your political experience? The reality has been just the opposite. People are compelled by the idea that I have a fresh perspective. You don't often find counselors that are in government. This has been both from Democrats, independents, and Republicans recognizing that unfortunately mental health issues affect everybody. And the implication of mental health issues, if we have a father or a mother that are struggling, then it trickles down to the children that are going to be struggling, right? And then that affects maybe their schooling. That maybe affects their ability to function behaviorally. So what we have to understand is we have to make sure we are prioritizing mental health. But one of the things that I say is I am a mental health provider right now, and I am treating people, and I feel like I'm the person that is, if you will, pulling people out of the water, trying to help them from keeping them from drowning. I believe in the legislature, we need to go upstream and make sure that we are doing policies that are helping people feel more safe and secure in our system.
What's an example of that?
So that would be housing, that would be less food insecurity, that would be gun safety. Those are things that all create a lot of angst, distress, challenges. And again, when we have those things not managed well, then as you can imagine, our distress, our anxiety, our depression, all become part of the picture that we're struggling with, and then that affects our work, our parenting, etc. So I think upstream so that we don't have as much need downstream to just keep adding more mental health providers. I love the idea, but I also don't think it's fully the solution.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
I think, that's been so interesting. So many people ask me about that at the doors. And I'll be honest, I have absolutely no interest in coming between a doctor and a woman or a family making that kind of decision. I have heard more stories in my counseling practice of people having to make really painful, emotionally tragic decisions. Individuals that have wanted babies that can't have them. They're not viable for some reason, have had to make really difficult choices, and the trauma that they feel from those situations that they've had to endure of no fault of their own. I don't want to think that I know better than anybody. And so the concept of trusting women, I believe, I trust.
Do you support any limits on abortion?
I think that is not really, again, my place. I feel like there's already limitations based on medical guidance and what's appropriate and what's safe. And I think just that is just a medical issue more than a legislative issue.
Moving on to transportation, what are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce? Well,
it's interesting. Roads. I hear about that all the time, right? And again, I'm in a rural district. So we have high traffic on our roads with some bigger machinery. So we need to make sure that we are investing in our infrastructure so that we have good roads that we can commute on, good roads that can bring our product to market. And so again, infrastructure, roads.
The environment, PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
So once again, we have a legislature that has put blocks to PFAS remediation monies that are available in this $3 billion budget surplus, and they have blocked those. And I think that is honestly very disturbing. Our legislature should be doing good things for regular people, keeping us safe, and making sure that it is meaningful action. And right now, what is more important than having safe drinking water? What is more important than making sure that our environment is healthy for the next generations? So to me, spending money on that I think is one of the very first priorities we should activate on.
We've come to the last two questions in our interview. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
I think, one of the big differences is she does believe that the legislature should make decisions about women's health care and reproductive choices. She has supported bans on abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. She has, if there is a rape survivor in an ER, she has asked that they don't get contraceptive care if they need it. I simply don't agree with that. I just don't agree with taking those rights, those decisions away from women, what they do with their body, and then the ramifications of their lives going forward. I just don't think that's my place.
Final question. Let's say you're elected and you get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol that would help you resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties together. What would that issue be?
We all get mental health care. I think I kind of say that in jest, but in some ways I think mental health care should be just as common as dental health care, right? Preventative, making sure that we're all emotionally strong and healthy and addressing our issues. But really one of the things that has been really concerning, and I just didn't know nearly enough about it until I got in, is the money in politics. It is gross. It is so disturbing. It is corrupting. It is unfortunate. It is wrong. I just don't know when you have that piece so strongly involved in politics, if it can be pure, if it can be service-oriented as it should be. And so I think that needs to be rectified, again, as soon as possible, if possible.
Well, thank you, Sarah Keyeski of Lodi, the Democratic candidate for the 14th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Sarah Keyeski, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.